It was just another ordinary Tuesday morning when David's life changed forever. He was walking through his scrapyard, checking on the piles of old metal and broken machines that filled his property. The sun was barely up, and the air still had that crisp morning chill that made him pull his jacket tighter around his shoulders. David owned this place for almost 10 years now. After his wife passed away 3 years ago, working with broken things somehow made sense. There was something peaceful about taking something that nobody wanted anymore and finding a way to fix it. Maybe it helped him deal with his own broken heart. He was sipping his coffee and making his usual rounds when he heard it. A strange humming sound coming from the back corner of the yard. It wasn't like anything he'd ever heard before. The sound. It was almost musical, but there was something urgent about it too. Like a cry for help. Following the sound, David pushed through a pile of old car parts and stopped dead in his tracks. There, in a small crater that definitely wasn't there yesterday, lay what looked like pieces of some kind of vehicle. But this wasn't like any car or truck he'd ever seen. The metal was smooth and silver, almost like liquid that had been frozen in place. Strange symbols were carved into the surface, glowing faintly with a blue light, and there, in the middle of all this wreckage, was a girl. She looked like she was maybe 16 or 17 years old, but something about her was different. Skin had a slight golden tint to it, and her hair was this beautiful silver color that seemed to shimmer in the morning light. She was wearing clothes that looked like they were made from the same material as the crashed vehicle. David's first instinct was to call the police or an ambulance, but something made him stop. The girl was breathing, but she looked so fragile lying there among all that twisted metal. And those symbols on the wreckage were still glowing. This wasn't exactly a normal car accident. He knelt down beside her and gently checked for injuries. She had some cuts and bruises, but nothing that looked life-threatening. As he was examining her, she suddenly opened her eyes. They were the most amazing eyes he'd ever seen. They started out as a deep purple color, but as she focused on his face, they slowly changed to a soft green. The girl tried to sit up quickly, but David held up his hands in a calming gesture. Hey, it's okay," he said softly. "You're safe. I'm not going to hurt you." She said something in a language he'd never heard before. It sounded like music mixed with wind chimes. Her voice was scared, and she kept looking around frantically, like she was searching for something or someone. "Easy there," David said, keeping his voice gentle. "You're hurt. Let me help you." The girl seemed to understand his tone, even if she didn't know his words. She let him help her sit up, but she was still very nervous. She kept touching her throat and making those musical sounds, probably trying to communicate with him. David pointed to himself. "David," he said clearly. Then he pointed to her with a questioning look. She tilted her head, studying him. Then she pointed to herself and made a sound that was like Zara. At least, that's what it sounded like to David's ears. "Zara," he repeated, and her eyes lit up with that color-changing thing again. This time they turned a warm amber, which David figured might mean she was happy. Over the next few minutes, they managed to establish some basic communication through pointing and simple gestures. Zara seemed to understand that David wanted to help her, and she was grateful. But she was also clearly frightened about something. David looked around at the wreckage again. Whatever this thing was, it definitely wasn't from around here. And if the government or military found out about it, they'd probably take Zara away for questioning or worse. Something deep in his gut told him that this girl had been through. "Enough already, come on," he said, helping her to her feet. "Let's get you cleaned up and figure out what happened here." Zara was unsteady on her legs at first, but she seemed to trust him. As they walked toward his house, David noticed that she kept looking back at the wreckage with this heartbroken expression. Her eyes turned a deep blue color, and he could tell she was sad about something. Inside his house, David got out his first aid kit and started cleaning up her cuts. As he worked, he was amazed by how fast she seemed to be healing. The smaller cuts were already starting to close up, and the bruises were fading before his eyes. "That's not normal," he muttered to himself. Zara heard him and looked worried. She touched one of the healing cuts and then looked at David with those color-changing eyes. They were a nervous yellow now. "It's okay," David assured her. "I'm not going to tell anyone. Whatever you are, wherever you came from, you're safe here. Something in his voice must have convinced her because she relaxed a little. She pointed to the window, in the direction of the wreckage, and made a crashing sound with her hands. Then she pointed up at the sky and made a sad, lonely sound. David began to understand. You came from up there, he said, pointing at the sky. And your ... ship? It crashed? Zara nodded eagerly. Then she held up her hand and made a gesture like there had been many, but now she was alone. Her eyes turned that deep blue again. Your people? David said quietly. They're gone? She nodded, and a single tear rolled down her cheek. It was silver, just like her hair. David felt his heart break a little. This girl was alone, scared, and probably millions of miles away from home. He thought about how he'd felt when his wife died, how lost and empty everything had seemed. But at least he'd had friends and family to help him through it. Zara had no one. Well, he said, sitting down across from her, you're not alone anymore. You can stay here as long as you need to. Zara might not have understood all his words, but she seemed to get the meaning. Her eyes turned that warm amber color again, and she smiled for the first time since he'd found her. Over the next few days, David learned that Zara was incredibly smart. She picked up English faster than anyone he'd ever seen. Within a week, she was speaking in simple sentences. In 2 weeks, she was having actual conversations with him. But it was her other abilities that really amazed him. Whenever something electronic broke down in the house, Zara would just touch it and somehow know exactly what was wrong. She fixed his old television, his broken radio, and even his truck without using any tools. She'd just place her hands on the device and concentrate, and somehow it would start working again. How do you do that? David asked one evening after she'd repaired his computer. Zara looked at her hands like she was seeing them for the first time. I don't know how to explain. In your words, she said slowly. Where I come from, we can ... talk to machines. Feel what's wrong with them. David shook his head in wonder. It's incredible. But Zara looked sad. Is it bad? Will people be scared of me? No, David said firmly. It's amazing. You're amazing. But ... maybe we should keep it between us for now. Zara nodded. She was learning quickly that her world and this one were very different. As the weeks passed, David found himself growing attached to this strange, wonderful girl who had literally fallen from the sky into his life. She was curious about everything, asked a million questions, and had this way of looking at the world that made him see things differently too. She helped him in the scrapyard, and her ability to understand machinery made his business more successful than it had ever been. But more than that, she filled the empty spaces in his house and in his heart that had been there since his wife died. One evening, as they sat on his porch watching the sunset, Zara turned to him with those color-changing eyes. David, she said, quietly, why did you help me? You didn't know me. You didn't know what I was. David thought about it for a moment. Because you needed help, he said simply. And because... Well, maybe I needed to help someone. Maybe we both needed each other. Zara smiled, and her eyes turned that warm amber color that David had learned meant she was happy. Thank you, she said, for giving me a home. David felt a warmth spread through his chest. Thank you for letting me. Neither of them knew that their peaceful life together was about to be interrupted. Miles away, in a government facility, Dr. Alina Rodriguez was studying satellite images of the energy burst that had occurred near David's scrapyard 2 months ago. She was getting closer to finding the source of that signal, and when she did, their quiet life would never be the same. 6 months had passed since David found Zara in his scrapyard, and life had settled into a comfortable routine. Every morning, she would wake up before him and make breakfast, using recipes she'd learned from watching cooking shows on television. She was fascinated by human food and had become quite good at making pancakes, though she still insisted on adding strange spices that somehow made everything taste better. David had set up a small study area in his spare room where Zara could do her online courses. He'd managed to get her enrolled in a homeschool program, creating a fake identity that said she was his niece from out of state. It wasn't completely legal, But David figured the government had bigger problems to worry about than one more student taking classes online. Zara was incredibly bright. She finished her high school equivalency in just 3 months and was now taking college-level courses in engineering and computer science. Her teachers thought she was some kind of genius, and David supposed they weren't wrong. She just happened to be a genius from another planet. "David, look at this," Zara called from the kitchen one morning. She was holding his old tablet, which had been broken for months. "I think I can make it work better than before." David watched as she placed her hands on the device and closed her eyes. There was this soft humming sound, almost too quiet too. Here, and then the tablet lit up. But it wasn't just working again. The screen was clearer than it had ever been, and it was running faster than when it was brand new. "How do you do that?" David asked, not for the first time. Zara opened her eyes and smiled. "It's hard to explain. I can feel what's wrong with things, like they're telling me where they hurt. Then I just ... help them feel better. It's like a doctor, but for machines." Something like that. She handed him the tablet. "Try it now." David turned it on and was amazed. The thing was running like a completely different device. "Zara, this is incredible. You could make a fortune with this ability." But Zara's expression grew serious. "David, I've been thinking about that. About what I can do. What if people find out? What if they want to study me or take me away?" David set down the tablet and looked at her carefully. Over the past 6 months, she'd grown more mature and confident, but there were still times when she looked scared and vulnerable. "Hey, we've talked about this. I'm not going to let anyone take you away. You're safe here. But what if they're stronger than you?" David sat down beside her on the couch. "Then we'll figure something out together. But Zara, you can't spend your whole life being afraid. You're an amazing person with incredible gifts. Maybe someday you'll be able to help a lot of people." Zara looked at him with those color-changing eyes of hers. They were a thoughtful green today. "You really believe that?" "I believe in you," David said simply. That afternoon, David's best friend Tony came by to help with a big project in the HE scrapyard. Tony was the only person who knew about Zara's abilities, and he'd been sworn to secrecy. He was a good guy who'd been David's friend since high school, and he treated Zara like she was family. "Hey, kiddo," Tony said as Zara came out to help them. "David told me you fixed his tablet. I think you could take a look at my truck. It's been making this weird noise." Zara nodded eagerly. She loved using her abilities to help people, especially when she knew they wouldn't judge her for being different. She placed her hands on the truck's hood and listened carefully. "Your alternator's going bad," she said after a moment. "And there's something wrong with your brake pads, too. The left front one is wearing unevenly." Tony's eyes widened. "Had the brakes checked last week, and they said everything was fine, but that noise has been bothering me. I can fix it," Zara offered, "if you want." David watched as Zara worked on Tony's truck. She had this focused expression when she used her abilities, like she was having a conversation with the machine that only she could hear. Within minutes, the truck was running smoother and quieter than it had in years. "That's incredible," Tony said, shaking his head in amazement. "You know, David, with skills like this, you too could revolutionize the auto repair industry." David noticed something else. While Zara was working, a government van had driven slowly past the scrapyard twice. It might have been nothing, but David had learned to be careful about anything unusual. That evening, David decided to have a serious conversation with Zara. They were sitting on the porch, watching the stars come out. "Zara always got a little," said when she looked at the stars, and David knew she was thinking about her home. "Zara," he said gently, "I need to ask you something. Are there others like you? Are there people from your world who might be looking for you?" Zara was quiet for a long moment. "I don't think so," she said finally. "When our ship was attacked, I was in an escape pod. I saw the other pods get destroyed. I think I'm the only one left." David felt his heart ache for her. "Sorry, it's not your fault." Zara looked at him with eyes that had turned a deep blue. "But sometimes I wonder if I'll ever really belong here. I'm not human, David. I'm not like you. You're exactly like me in all the ways that matter," David said firmly. You're kind, you're smart, you care about people. That's what makes someone a good person, not where they come from. Zara smiled, and her eyes shifted to that warm amber color. You always know what to say to make me feel better. That's what family does, David said. The word family seemed to surprise Zara. Is that what we are, family? Well, yeah. I mean, if you want to be. You're the most important person in my life, Zara. You brought light back into this old house. Zara was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that made David's chest feel warm. On my world, we have a saying, the heart chooses its own stars to follow. You're my star now. David felt tears in his eyes. You're mine too, kiddo. Later that night, after Zara had gone to bed, David sat at his kitchen table, thinking about their conversation. Over the past 6 months, he'd watched her grow from a scared, lost girl into a confident young woman. She was brilliant and talented, with a good heart and a desire to help others, but he'd also noticed other changes. The way she looked at him sometimes, with an expression he couldn't quite read. The way she'd grown protective of him, getting upset when he mentioned meeting other people or going out. David told himself it was just because she was worried about being left alone. But sometimes he wondered if there was something more. The next morning, David woke up to find Zara already in the kitchen, but she wasn't making breakfast. She was standing at the window, looking out at the road with a worried expression. What's wrong? David asked. That van, Zara said, has been parked across the street for an hour. The same one from yesterday. David looked out the window and felt his stomach drop. There was indeed a dark government van parked where Zara said it was. As they watched, a woman in a suit got out and started walking toward their house. Go upstairs, David said quietly. Stay in your room until I tell you it's safe. Zara's eyes turned a frightened yellow. David, what if they're here for me? Then I'll handle it, David said. Trust me. No. The woman knocked on the door, and David took a deep breath before opening. She was tall and professional-looking, with short dark hair and serious eyes. Mr. Thompson, she said. I'm Dr. Elena Rodriguez with the Department of Scientific Research. I'd like to ask you a few questions about some unusual energy readings we've detected in this area. David's heart was pounding, but he kept his voice calm. I'm not sure what you're talking about. May I come in? Dr. Rodriguez asked. But it wasn't really a question. As she stepped into his house, David prayed that Zara would stay hidden upstairs. Their peaceful life together was about to be tested in ways he'd never imagined. Dr. Elena Rodriguez walked into David's living room with the confidence of someone who was used to getting answers. She looked around carefully, and David could tell she was taking note of everything. The fixed electronics, the unusually clean. How's the subtle improvements that Zara had made to their daily life? Mr. Thompson, 18 months ago, our satellites detected an unusual energy burst in this area. The readings were unlike anything we've seen before. She pulled out a tablet and showed him some charts that meant nothing to David. We've been investigating the source, and our research has led us here. David tried to keep his expression neutral. I'm sorry, but I don't know anything about energy bursts. This is just a scrapyard. Yes. But it's a very successful scrapyard, Dr. Rodriguez said. Your business has filed several patents in the past year for advanced recycling techniques. Techniques that are, frankly, decades ahead of current technology. Okay, upstairs, David could hear the faint creaking of floorboards. He hoped Zara was being careful. I've always been good with machines, David said. It's just hard work and experience. Dr. Rodriguez smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. Mr. Thompson, I've been studying energy signatures for 15 years. I know what I'm looking for. I know you're hiding something. Before David could respond, there was a crash from upstairs. Both he and Dr. Rodriguez looked toward the ceiling. David's heart sank as he heard footsteps running across the floor above them. Who else is in the house? Dr. Rodriguez asked, her hand moving toward something under her jacket. Just my niece, David said quickly. She's probably just dropped something. But Dr. Rodriguez was already moving toward the stairs. I think we should meet this niece of yours. David followed her upstairs, his mind racing. He found Dr. Rodriguez standing in the doorway of Zara's room, staring at the girl who had become like a daughter to him. Zara was pressed against the far wall, her eyes wide with fear. They were cycling through colors rapidly, yellow, blue, purple, green, like a kaleidoscope of emotions. She was holding one of David's old radios, which was now sparking and making strange noises. "Fascinating," Dr. Rodriguez whispered. "The energy readings are off the charts." "Leave her alone," David said, stepping between them. "Oh, she's just a kid." "She's not human," Dr. Rodriguez said matter-of-factly. "And she's exactly what I've been looking for." Zara spoke for the first time, her voice shaking. "David, I'm sorry. Tried to call for help, but the radio started acting strange when I touched it." Dr. Rodriguez pulled out some kind of scanning device. "Incredible. She's emitting electromagnetic fields just by being emotional. This is the discovery of the century." "You're not taking her anywhere," David said firmly. "Mr. Thompson, this isn't a request. This being represents a potential threat to national security. She needs to be studied and contained." That was when Zara did something that surprised everyone. She stepped forward, her fear replaced by determination. Her eyes had turned a fierce red color that David had never seen before. "Not a being, or a thing," she said, her voice stronger now. "I'm a person. I have thoughts and feelings and dreams. And David is my family." "You're an alien," Dr. Rodriguez said. "You don't belong here. Neither do you," Zara replied. "This is David's house. You're the one who doesn't belong." David felt a surge of pride at Zara's courage, but he also knew they were in serious trouble. "Dr. Rodriguez, surely we can work something out. Zara has never hurt anyone. She's been helping people." "That's not the point," Dr. Rodriguez said. "She's a potential weapon. What if there are others like her? What if they're hostile? I'm the only one left," Zara said quietly. "Hey, people are gone. This is my home now." For a moment, Dr. Rodriguez looked almost sympathetic, but then her professional mask slipped back into place. "I'm sorry, but I have my orders. You're coming with me." "No," David said. "I won't let you take her. Mr. Thompson, don't make this harder than it needs to be. We're not going to hurt her. We just need to understand what she is." "She's a girl who lost everything and found a new family," David said. "That's what she is." Dr. Rodriguez reached for her phone. "I'm calling for backup. This situation is beyond what I can handle alone." That's when everything changed. Fast. Rodriguez was dialing. Zara looked at David with those color-changing eyes. They were a deep, intense purple now, and David realized she was trying to tell him something. "David," she said softly, "I need you to trust me." Before he could ask what she meant, Zara placed her hand on the wall. Suddenly, every electronic device in the house started going crazy. The lights flickered, the television turned on and off, and Dr. Rodriguez's phone went completely dead. "What are you doing?" Dr. Rodriguez demanded. "Protecting my family," Zara said. The electromagnetic pulse that Zara had created affected everything in a 3-block radius. Car alarms were going off, streetlights were flickering, and David could hear confused voices from the neighbors. "Need to go," Zara said to David. "Now." David didn't hesitate. He grabbed a bag and started throwing in some clothes and important documents. "Where?" "I don't know," Zara said. "But we can't stay here." Dr. Rodriguez was trying to get her phone to work, but it was completely fried. "You've just committed a federal crime," she said to Zara. "Interference with government operations. You tried to take away the only person who ever cared about me," Zara replied. "I think that's worse." As they prepared to leave, David realized something that shook him to his core. The way Zara had protected him, the fierce look in her eyes, the way she'd called him family. It wasn't just gratitude anymore. Somewhere along the way, this girl he'd raised and cared for had developed feelings for him that went beyond what a daughter should feel for a father figure. And the most terrifying part was that he was starting to feel something back. "David," Zara said as they reached the front door, "I need to tell you something. The way I feel about you. ... It's not normal. It's not for humans. Zara, we don't have time for this right now. No, you need to understand. Where I come from, we don't have the same rules about age or relationships. When we find someone who completes us, someone who makes us feel whole, we bond for life." And David ... double quotes, her eyes turned that warm amber color. complete me. David felt his world shift. Zara, you're still young. You don't understand what you're saying. I'm not as young as you think, she said quietly. My people age differently. What looks like a teenager to you is actually a young adult in my species. I've been trying to tell you for months, but I was scared you'd reject me. Before David could respond, Dr. Rodriguez appeared in the doorway behind them. This conversation is over. You're both coming with me. But she wasn't alone anymore. 3 other agents had arrived, and they all looked very serious. Run, Zara whispered to David. I'm not leaving you. We'll run together, she said, taking his hand. Real family. As they ran out the back door of the house that had been their home for 18 months, David's mind was reeling. Zara's confession had changed everything. She wasn't the child he'd rescued anymore. She was a young woman with feelings he was, only beginning to understand, and as they disappeared into the woods behind his property, David realized that his own feelings were more complicated than he'd ever admitted to himself. The girl who had fallen from the sky had become the most important person in his life. And now they were running from the government together, with nothing but each other to depend on. The chase was just beginning, and David knew their lives would never be the same. David and Zara had been running for 3 days straight. They'd managed to stay ahead of the government agents by sticking to back roads and avoiding populated areas. Tony had helped them by lending his old cabin in the mountains, a place that was off the grid and hard to find. The cabin was small and basic, with no electricity or running water. But it was safe, and that was all that mattered right now. David had never been so tired in his life, but every time he looked at Zara, he found the strength to keep going. They were sitting by the fireplace on their 3rd night, sharing a can of soup that David had heated over the flames. The orange light danced across Zara's face, and David couldn't help but notice how much she'd changed since he'd first found her in the scrapyard. I'm sorry, Zara said quietly, breaking the comfortable silence. I'm sorry I got you into this mess. Hey, David said, moving closer to her on the old couch. This isn't your fault. You didn't ask for any of this to happen. But if I hadn't used my abilities, if I'd just gone with Dr. Rodriguez, you'd still have your home, your business, your normal life. David shook his head. That wasn't a life worth living if it meant losing you. Zara looked at him with those color-changing eyes. They were a soft blue tonight, which David had learned meant she was sad but hopeful. Do you really mean that? I mean it more than I've ever meant anything, David said. Zara, you have to understand something. Before I found you, I was just existing, going through the motions. You brought joy back into my life, even though I'm not human, even though I'm different. Especially because you're different, David said. You see the world in ways I never could. You make me want to be better. Zara was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that made David's heart skip. David, I need to tell you more about my people, about how we love. David felt nervous, but he nodded. Okay. When someone from my world finds their true partner, it's not just romantic love. It's a connection that goes deeper than anything humans experience. Call it soul bonding. It means we're meant to be together for life, Zara.
Please.
Let me finish, she said, her eyes turning that determined red color. I've been fighting these feelings for months because I thought they were wrong. But they're not wrong for my people. What I feel for you. ... It's real. It's the most real thing I've ever experienced. David felt his chest tighten, but I raised you. I was like a father to you. You were never like a father to me, Zara said firmly. You were my protector, my friend, my safe place. But David, I'm not a child. I never was. My people reach full maturity much earlier than humans. What you saw as a teenager was actually a young adult in my species. David stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because I was scared, Zara admitted. I was scared you'd reject me. I was scared you'd think I was a monster for having these feelings. You're not a monster, David said softly. You're the most beautiful person I've ever known, inside and out. Zara's eyes turned that warm amber color. Then why do you keep pushing me away? David stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the dark forest. Because I'm scared too. I'm scared of what people will think. I'm scared of taking advantage of you. I'm scared of... Of what? David turned back to her. of losing you. If we cross this line, if we become something more than what we are, and it doesn't work out, I can't lose you, Zara. You're all I have. Zara stood up and walked over to him. You're not going to lose me. Don't you understand? I've already chosen you. My heart, my soul, everything I am, it all belongs to you. David looked into her eyes and saw the truth there. This wasn't a teenage crush or gratitude. This was something deep and real and powerful. Zara, Before he could finish, they heard the sound of vehicles approaching. Car doors slamming. Voices calling out commands. "He found us," Zara whispered. David grabbed his jacket and the bag of supplies. Back door. Now. But as they reached the back of the cabin, they saw flashlights moving through the trees. They were surrounded. David Thompson and the alien entity, a voice called out through a megaphone. "You're surrounded. Come out with your hands up." David and Zara looked at each other. There was nowhere to run. "I have an idea," Zara said, "but you have to trust me completely." "I trust you with my life," David said. Zara closed her eyes and placed her hands on the walls of the cabin. David could feel the air around them starting to vibrate. All the electronic devices the agents were carrying, their radios, their night vision goggles, their vehicles. Everything started going haywire. "What are you doing?" David asked. "Creating a distraction," Zara said. "But more than that." "Sending out a signal?" "A signal to who?" "To any of my people who might still be out there, who might be listening." The electromagnetic pulse that Zara created was stronger than anything she'd done before, knocked out power for miles around. And David could hear the agents outside cursing as their equipment failed. But something else was happening too. In the distance, David could see lights in the sky. Not aircraft lights, something else. Something that moved in ways that defied physics. "Are those?" David started to ask. "My people," Zara said, her eyes wide with amazement. "Some of them survived. They've been hiding, waiting for a signal." Dr. Rodriguez's voice came through the darkness. "We have them surrounded. All units, move in now." But the lights in the sky were getting closer. And David realized that everything was about to change again. "Zara," he said, taking her hand. "Whatever happens next, I want you to know something. I love you, not as a guardian, not as a protector. I love you as a man loves a woman. I love you with all my heart." Yes. Zara's eyes turned that brilliant amber color, brighter than David had ever seen them. "I love you too, David, in every way possible." As the agents closed in and the mysterious lights descended from the sky, David and Zara held each other close. They were about to face the biggest challenge of their lives, but they were facing it together. The first alien ship touched down in the clearing around the cabin. David saw figures emerging from it. They looked like Zara, but older, more mature. And they were armed. Zara of the House of Zarian. One of them called out in that musical language David had first heard her speak. "We have come for you." Dr. Rodriguez and her agents found themselves caught between two alien forces and two people who refused to be separated. The final confrontation was about to begin, and David knew that nothing would ever be the same. The clearing around the cabin had turned into a standoff. Government agents with their weapons drawn faced off against three alien beings who had emerged from ships that looked like liquid silver. And in the middle of it all, David and Zara held each other's hands, refusing to let go. The leader of the aliens was tall and elegant, with the same silver hair and color-changing eyes as Zara, but his presence commanded respect. He spoke in that musical language, and Zara responded in kind. David couldn't understand the words, but he could tell from their tone that they were arguing about something. "What's he saying?" David whispered. "Name is Commander Thane," Zara said quietly. "He's from my father's military unit. He wants me to come with them, to help rebuild our civilization on a new world." "And what did you tell him?" "That my home is here now?" "With you." Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward, her weapon still raised. "I don't know what's happening here, but this is still United States territory. You're all under arrest." Commander Thane turned to look at her, and his eyes flashed that dangerous red color. When he spoke, his English was perfect but heavily accented. "Dr. Rodriguez, I believe." We have been monitoring your communications. You seek to capture and study our people. For the security of our planet, Dr. Rodriguez replied. Your planet is already secure, Thane said. We have no interest. In conquest, we are refugees, seeking only to survive. Then why are you armed? One of the agents called out. Because you threatened one of our own, Thane said simply. Zara is precious to us. She carries the genetic memories of our entire species. David felt Zara tense beside him. What does that mean? He asked her. It means I'm not just a survivor, Zara said sadly. I'm a living library. Everything my people knew, everything we were, is stored in my DNA. That's why the escape pod kept me alive when the others died. David suddenly understood why Dr. Rodriguez had been so determined to capture Zara. She wasn't just an alien. She was the key to an entire civilization's knowledge. So you see, Thane continued, we cannot allow her to remain here. She is too important to our people's future. I'm not going, Zara said firmly, speaking in English so everyone could understand. I've made my choice. Child, you do not understand the responsibility you carry, Thane said. I understand perfectly, Zara replied. But I also understand something you don't. Love doesn't follow the rules of duty or responsibility. It follows the heart. Dr. Rodriguez looked confused. What are you talking about? David stepped forward. She's talking about the fact that we're in love. No one is going to separate us. You're in love with an alien, one of the agents said with disgust. I'm in love with Zara, David said. Firmly. The most amazing person I've ever met. And I don't care what anyone thinks about it. Thane studied David with those piercing eyes. Human, you do not understand what you are saying. Our people bond for life. If Zara has chosen you, she can never choose another. Good, David said, because I never want her to. But you are not one of us. You will age and die while she remains young for centuries. You will cause her pain. David felt his heart sink. He hadn't thought about that. Zara, is that true? Zara's eyes turned that warm amber color. David, I don't care if I only have 50 years with you instead of 500 alone. I'd rather have a short life filled with love than a long life filled with emptiness. But your people need you, Dr. Rodriguez said. If you carry their genetic memories, you have a responsibility to preserve them. Can do that from here. Zara said, I can share the knowledge with both humans and my people. I can be a bridge between our worlds. Thane considered this for a long moment. It is ... possible, but the council will not approve of your bonding with a human. Then the council will have to accept it, Zara said, because I'm not changing my mind. Dr. Rodriguez lowered her weapon slightly. Wait, you're talking about sharing alien technology with humans? That could benefit both species. It could, Zara agreed, but only if humans promise to use it for good, to help people, not hurt them. David watched as the standoff slowly turned into a negotiation. Dr. Rodriguez was intrigued by the possibility of gaining alien knowledge through cooperation rather than force. Thane was realizing that Zara might be more valuable as a willing ambassador than as a reluctant prisoner. I have a proposal, David said. What if we set up some kind of exchange program? Zara could work with both humans and her people, sharing knowledge and helping both species grow. And in return, Thane asked, in return, you let us live our lives in peace? Together? Dr. Rodriguez nodded slowly. The government would be very interested in that kind of arrangement. Peaceful cooperation instead of conflict. But there would be conditions, Thane said. Zara would need to spend time with our people learning the full extent of her genetic memories. And your government would need to promise protection for any of our people who choose to remain on Earth. I can work with that, Dr. Rodriguez said. Over the next few hours, they hammered out an agreement. Zara would work as a cultural and technological ambassador, splitting her time between Earth and the new world her people were building. David would be her partner in all things, helping her bridge the gap between human and alien understanding. 6 months later, David stood in his backyard, which had been transformed into a beautiful garden that combined earth plants with exotic flowers from Zara's home world. He was wearing a simple black suit, and his hands were shaking slightly as he waited. Tony appeared at his side, grinning. You nervous, buddy? Terrified, David admitted, but also happier than I've ever been. The wedding was small, but perfect. Dr. Rodriguez was there, along with several government officials who had become friends during the months of negotiations. Thane and several other aliens attended as well, representing Zara's people, but David only had eyes for Zara as she walked toward him in a dress that seemed to be made of starlight itself. Her eyes were that brilliant amber color, and she was more beautiful than anything he'd ever seen. "You look incredible," he whispered as she reached him. "You clean up pretty well yourself," she said. Her eyes sparkling with joy, the ceremony combined human and alien traditions, exchanged rings made from metal from both worlds, and Zara shared a ritual from her people that involved touching hands and minds, allowing David to briefly experience the depth of her love for him. When they kissed, David felt complete in a way he'd never experienced before. This strange, wonderful girl who had fallen from the sky had become his whole world. "I love you, Mrs. Thompson," he said against her lips. "I love you too, Mr. Thompson," she replied. "For all the years we have together, however many that might be." As they held each other, surrounded by friends from two different worlds, David knew that their love story was just beginning. They had built something beautiful from the wreckage of two broken lives. And now they would spend the rest of their time together helping others find their own place in the universe. The girl from the stars had found her home at last, and David had found his reason for living. Together, they would face whatever came next, knowing that love truly could conquer all.